1921 on Maine Duck Island, then owned by a fisherman and forwarder, Claude King Cole. Police from Belleville uncovered his illegal cache of whiskey, awaiting its transport to Cape Vincent, New York. And here's King Cole and his son Cecil. He took over the Maine Duck Island in 1908, rented shore space to other fishermen, and soon found that the rum running was a very good way to make a lot of money fast. This was Cole's home on Maine Duck, about 20 miles from Kingston. The fishermen and other rum runners nicknamed the path in front of the Cole home Broadway Avenue. And this is the boat, naturally enough named the C.W. Cole, that he used to haul both legal fish and illegal booze from Maine Duck Island to Cape Vincent, New York. We called some of these the folk heroes of our past, and we meant just that. In both Canada and the United States, drinking and abstaining from drink have always divided the crowd. In the opening decades of the century, there were both freewheeling acceptance of liquor and hostile rejection of it by the militant temperance groups. There were so-called heroes on both sides. And on this program, we're talking about the daring rum runner. After the U.S. passed the Volstead Act in 1920, prohibiting the manufacture or sale of booze in any form on U.S. soil, it was estimated there were about 100,000 rum runners in Canada who hiked the stuff across the border to the bootleggers.
My partner in Watertown, Ross Sereno, he was rough.
Some of these famous characters, such as Bruce Conley of Pittsburgh Township, kept their rum-running sideline to themselves for decades. But some have finally decided that if we want to know, they're ready to take the wraps off just a little. How much money do you think you could make in a season or a month?
I don't know, but one time when we were working with the plane, they told me that my share for about 8 months was 17,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose roughly a couple of thousand a month.
Well, in those days, what would this be? 1925, was it then? About then?
25, 26 or 7 long in there.
Pretty good money, eh?
Good. Oh, you're a millionaire.
The book with Norm's story, and that of many other colorful folk, some still living, is Booze, Boats, and Billions, written by Bill C.W. Hunt of Belleville, who spent almost 6 years interviewing more former rum runners of the 20s and 30s or their neighbors or relatives than almost anybody else. We had the privilege of talking to Bill and retired fisherman Francis Wellbanks at Francis' home on Amherst Island. Mr. Wellbanks was 14 when he remembered hearing that his father's fishing net sometimes got entangled with the bags of whiskey hidden on rum lines at the bottom of the lake.
Well, at the beginning, the Coast Guard had, no armed boats at all on the lakes. And then, 1924, the first one appeared at Oswego. Mm-hmm. It was a 35-foot picket boat, and they had a Lewis machine gun, the same type of gun that they used in the First World War on the airplanes. Mm-hmm. And they gradually escalated until by 1929, the Coast Guard had 223 armed boats on the Great Lakes. Yeah. And the Border Patrol had another 60 just at Detroit. Yeah. So there was altogether close to 300 armed vessels on the Great Lakes, just American armed vessels, more than any time in our history, including the War of 1812. The rum runners, some of them, started to arm to keep from being captured. Mm-hmm. The Stout brothers out of Rochester built a boat, the Dorothy, which had a 50 caliber machine gun, and it was armor plated at the stern and in the wheelhouse, and when the Coast Guard took after them, they fired back. Yeah. There was another boat called the Uncas that operated on Lake Erie that was about the same size, about 50, 55 feet long, wide berth beam, I should say, 15 to 18 feet in beam. And the Uncas was actually captured in a big shootout by the Coast Guard, and they wounded some of the crew members. But they never captured the Dorothy. They never captured the Stout brothers.
If they got your boat and got the haul and everything, you lost the boat, eh? And I guess some of these guys you write about in here, they lost 2 or 3 boats. That's expensive in those days, eh?
Well, the funny part of it is that
so they decided to defend it.
That's true, but the funny part of it is they'd lose the boat, and then there'd be an auction, and they'd send somebody over, and they'd buy the boat back at a fairly low price. And this didn't always happen, because in 1925, the Coast Guard adopted a policy of seizing the boat, and if it was any good at all, turning it into a rum chaser. So the rum runners wound up being chased by their own boats. One fellow, Nick Vanderveer out of Port Colborne, he was so incensed by this because they captured a particularly fast boat. We don't know for sure, but the evidence is pretty indicative that Nick Vanderveer had somebody burn up the boat so that the Coast Guard never
that's
got to
right.
chase
It was in
somebody.
dry dock for repair. It says in your book there, and they went down one morning, and it was just char.
That's right. Somehow or other, the middle of winter time, it caught fire.
Yep.
Combustible snow underneath it.
Well, it got to be a pretty angry kind of confrontation after some of the rum runners got armed and the Coast Guard strength built up.
Oh, yes.
It's a wonder to me, Francis, that they kept doing it. It was dangerous. You could lose your life, and some of these guys did. If not from getting frozen in the ice, you could have your head shot off like this fella Anderson.
That's right.
Why did they keep on?
The money, greed, I suppose, the big thing.
Yeah. What about the economic time they were living in? How much could you earn doing an honest man's day's work compared to rum running?
Well, I'd say that rum running was a lot more profitable than what they were doing. And that's the reason they were at it.
Yeah.
Fishing wasn't all that good either, was it, in the late 20s?
Well, it kind of comes and goes, eh?
Yeah.
Some years were good, some years were not so good.
Well, Bruce Lowry was typical of that.
Yeah, then he moved here from the Ducks, and he fished here about 2 years, and then he went rum running. Things got a little tough. But he was no criminal. He was a real nice guy. He was just as nice a guy as I ever knew.
Yeah, but Francis, I don't think, from the evidence that Bill Hunt here has garnered, that most of these rum runners, they didn't see themselves as criminals. I think you're right. I was interviewing one man, and he was one of the guys. He went from Wolf Island to Cape Vincent in a rowboat.
Yeah.
He didn't say he was breaking the law. He didn't say he was a rum runner. He said he was an exporter.
I guess I think likely a lot of them felt
Earning an
that
honest
way.
living, helping people that had a need for a service, you see.
But you know, Mills was a big runner in my time. And
Charlie Mills?
Yes.
Tell us about him.
And I remember him, he made 3 trips a week from Belleville across, and this is while we were still in the Ducks before 24, eh? And he had 1,000 cases at a time. He was putting 3,000 cases a week across it, and it was easy. But soon when it got tough, well, then he fell into bad time.
Gentleman Charlie Mills, shown here with his girlfriend, Jenny Batley, had been a stunt flyer who had come through 2 crashes. He would take a lot of risk to make a good living. For instance, $150 a week in 1925 to haul Old Tower beer, made in Kingston, across Lake Ontario. That was the equivalent of about $2,000 a week in 1988 dollars.
The fellows who owned the boats made an awful lot more money than that. Like Bruce, with his own boat, got $8 a case in 1929. So he'd take over 80 to 100 cases. Yeah. At 100 cases, he'd make $800 a trip.
Yeah.
He made 3 trips. He made $2,400, and you could buy a new car for $800 then.
At the waterside, near the foot of Mowat in Kingston, stone buildings remain that were part of the Kingston Ale Company. The author says it's Old Tower beer, sold for $4.50 a bag in Cape Vincent, New York, and each burlap bag contains 24 quarts. A U.S. customer paid about $1.50 a customer. Norm Conley, early in his career, rowed a small boat loaded with Old Tower across the river in the dark of night to Cape Vincent. He also worked for a Chicago operator named Sinbad the Sailor, hauling whiskey from Montreal to Kingston. About where the foot of West Street is, Norm bagged the Quebec liquor to take to Wolf Island, across in a car, then to his rowboat.
I looked after this end of it here. He bought the liquor in Quebec.
Yeah.
And we took that all, went down to Cleveland with it.
Around here, though, you got connected with a couple of other people. One of them had an airplane.
There were 3 of us.
Yeah.
Had on the plane, but that was in Syracuse.
You borrowed some money from a Miss Gray in Syracuse.
She lived outside of Syracuse, and she owned 2 or 3 banks. She had a lot of money.
The Miss Gray financed 2 airplanes for Norm and 2 associates. They used cars, boats, and planes to deliver the liquor to dry America.
You got shot in the knee once.
You got nicked?
Right, yeah.
Where?
I just lived.
Will you tell me about that?
Hey?
Tell us about that. When was that?
Well,
Where were you going?
I was on my own at that time, and I was headed for Oswego, I guess. But I was going from the river up.
Was that in the Dodge?
No.
Another car.
No, this is another car. I just bought the damn car and lost it the first trip.
What happened there?
Well, the Border Patrol come across the road and we smashed the both of them. I was sitting in the passenger side. And this other fellow was from, forget a little town there, beside the Syracuse anyway. And so, and we hit, well, naturally.
You ran right into the Border Patrol cars.
Oh, yeah.
And
nailed it right, right about the motor.
And what did you guys do?
He went one way and I went the other.
Dear.
But I got caught in a damn fence. And
What kind of a fence?
barbed wire fence. But the damn trouble was, this fellow that had worked for us, him and this another fellow came out from England. So I bought 2 pair of the pants from him, English pants. They were tough, you know.
Yeah.
But damn it, I got stuck in that barbed wire fence, and that's when the bullet went through my rubber boot and burnt my leg.
These U.S. patrol officers were firing at you.
Oh, yes, yes.
What were they using? What kind of guns did they have? Did you ever find out?
Never, I didn't ask them.
Anyway, how did you get out of that, Norm?
Well, we got back to the river, and this other fellow knew where we had put the boat up in the tree. We pulled it up. 2 of us got up in the tree.
Pulled the boat up in the tree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
So,
you had to get it back down out of the tree, eh?
yeah, well, that wouldn't be, there was no problem.
Yeah.
We just got it down, then rode back across, and he stayed with me for a couple of days, and then we went over across to Cape Vincent, and I got a car, and I drove him home.
It was Sinbad that gave Bruce Conley his alias, Leo Gosier.
We just decided on the name and didn't want to use my own name, you know, because when I started, I was hauling out of Quebec when I was 16 years old. And I was running across Lake Ontario at 16 and working on the river at 16. Because I loved excitement.
Besides the Lewis machine gun, the Border Patrol foredecks were equipped with 1-pound cannon that had a 2-mile range. If one of these met you in the dark and could get close enough, you would soon have a lot of holes in your hull. If rum runners couldn't outrun the police boat, they jettisoned their liquor into Lake Ontario to get rid of the evidence.
In fact, one night I was rolling across, and I heard voices. I was only about a little over halfway across. How hell the oars. Damn it, there was the cutter. I was rolling right into it.
The Coast Guard.
The Coast Guard cutter. So,
What happened?
I just backed up a little and kept backing up. And pretty soon the Coast Guard cutter started up, and away they went up the river, and I went on through.
They didn't even bother you, eh?
They didn't see me. Oh, they'd have bothered. Oh, yeah.
But they didn't even know you were there.
No.
That you weren't close enough for them to see you. That little island in the middle, opposite Fort Henry, is called Whiskey Island. From Detroit to Brockville, there are several islands named Whiskey after the exploits of the rum runner. It was dangerous, as Bill Hunt's book, Booze, Boats, and Billions, points out. Some of your friends disappeared out there. Can you tell me about that?
Phillips was one, wasn't he?
Yeah,
What about...
Clarence Phillips and Bill Sheridan and Tony King? The three of them were together, and they were lost on the way coming in from the Ducks.
They had delivered their...
Yeah. No, I don't know whether they delivered or whether it still was at the Ducks. I wasn't interested at that time.
Right.
But Cease Phillips, we found him up on the shore about a mile up above our place.
Over at Wolf Island.
Yeah. And I think Bill Sheridan was found on the head of Simcoe Island.
Oh.
And Tony Kane, my great uncle over back at Cape Vincent, found him on the shore.
Yeah. It was a big risk to take in some of that weather, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because those, well, particularly that boat, that was one of the old Fireflies that Cease was running. It was fast, you know, for that time, 30, 35 mile an hour, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what happened. It was a chunk of ice, and it just took the bow right out of it.
Some Canadians did go to jail, didn't they? What was happening
Charlie
here?
Mills went for a year down to Atlanta. He was in the pen for a year, and Wild Bill Sheldon was in for 6 months, and there was a fellow on Lake Erie that got 3 years because he made the mistake of beating up a Coast Guardsman.
I think Bruce was in for a few months.
Public hated.
On the start.
Yeah, a couple of months, and then they'd arrested him illegally, so he got free. Yeah.
But the public didn't dislike the Rum Runner or the bootlegger that he was working for. And they didn't like to see these poor guys getting sent to prison and fined and having their belongings confiscated.
They wanted the product.
We're supplying a need here.
In the Prohibition time, you fellows were earning a living, and some people would say it was an honest living, and some would say it was a dishonest living. How did you yourself look on it, Norm?
Well, I figured it was just a good living.
It was a good living for a lot of you, all
because
right.
I had a room at the British American Hotel for 3 years.
Outwitting the U.S. Border Patrol was a game with a lot of tricks, and the Rum Runners were good at
They
it.
would put in at Bain Duck and lay over and wait a few days to try to throw the Coast Guard off. Sometimes they would say that their destination was Oswego when it really was Rochester, or they would clear with the name Mary on the front of the boat. Then as soon as they got out, they'd take the sign out and flip it, and on the other side it might say Ann or Jean or something. And they all kinds of tricks like that.
The Rum Runners really were heroes to most of the U.S. population. They hated Prohibition, and they gave their own Customs and Border Patrol little support to catch the illegal liquor peddlers. The Canadian Rum Runner was looked upon as a sort of commercial folk hero who was bucking a stupid U.S. law. That's how many of the American customers felt. But when the Border Patrol and the Rum Runners started shooting it out and people got hurt, and the bribery of border officials greased the liquor shipping, President Hoover wanted Prime Minister Mackenzie King to take action.
They were trying to get
Hoover
King
put pressure on King to do what?
to stop the clearance of liquor from Canada, because it was quite legal in Canada what these people were doing. In other words, the liquor would leave Goodham and Wart's distillery and go down to Whitby or go to Belleville or go to Kingston, and the fellows picked it up, and they were liquor exporters, and they took it across to a customer who'd ordered it in the States.
Yeah.
It was that customer, who was a bootlegger in the States, of course, who paid the $8 a case to the Rum Runner.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that was legal. They didn't break any law until they crossed into American waters. And it was illegal to import liquor into the United States. It was illegal to manufacture it there. It wasn't illegal to manufacture it here. So we were supplying this need. And what Hoover was trying to get King to do was to make it illegal to export Canadian liquor, whether it was whiskey or beer, to the United States. And eventually, in 1930, June of 1930, King gave in to the pressure. Well, he also thought it was politically expedient, or he wouldn't have done it.
After all, liquor by Canadian law had to be accompanied by a written declaration of its destination. Some funny loading papers turned up.
Why did they have these loads of beer and ale and liquor coming out of Belleville and Bath and Kingston with bills of lading that said Cuba, Mexico.
Yeah.
These little wooden boats are going to head out for Mexico? What was going on here?
Pretty far-fetched, of course.
The government gave in to the Americans in 1924 on the end of that practice. Then they had to say they were going to the States. But the reason why they did it initially was to avoid paying taxes. There was an excise tax of $9 a gallon. And if you were shipping the load to a place which was legal, such as Cuba, which didn't have prohibition, you didn't have to pay that excise tax.
Oh, yes.
But if you were shipping it to the United States, then you did. And so the customs was pretty corrupt at the time, and they went along with this business of pretending that this 25-foot boat was going to Cuba.
And, says Bill, Amherst Island's Bruce Lowry had fallen in love with Letty Hicks, shown here with Lowry and Lowry's little brother. But Letty's father, a Methodist in Prince Edward County, would not let his daughter marry a rum runner. Some died when their boat overturned in winter, some were shot. A few went to prison, but Norm Conley never did. At 81, his memories of the rum running are like a very entertaining movie replaying itself in his memory.